Halloween when I was 6 years old. And now I'll get to relive those memories. I've got the miniature. So at one point, G.I. Joe was releasing these little pack-in miniatures, and I actually brought up a Miri to show you to scale. So they're a little bit out of scale. They're a little bit bigger, which in the case of Sergeant Slaughter, I think is forgivable. So I am just going to be this giant, probably wearing as close to that as I can approximate based on Pathfinder equipment. Just this giant guy barking orders at everybody. And I'm so looking forward to that. I am so looking forward to the Year of the Serpent. This was my most fanboyish segment we've ever done. It was just yelling with barely conceived thoughts just falling all over the place. But man, am I happy. I am so happy about Year of the Serpent. But Param, you're right. We should talk about Gen Con since it's in like 6 days. Mm-hmm. And I think people need a couple of reminders on how to be prepared for Gen Con.
Okay. Well, I could write all kinds of reminders on how to be prepared for Gen Con, but Sean K. Reynolds recently has come out of the woodwork to again point to his blog post about the Gen Con tips and rules to bring. A little not safe for work, so a little bit stronger language in some of it than we use on the show, but this is from a man who has done a billion Gen Cons, though all of us here also have plenty of Gen Con experience between our belts too. My biggest suggestion for Gen Con that I'll personally throw out that is more recent is, since a lot of you all are going to be doing ebooks and ebook readers, I recommend not only remembering to bring your power cord, but to go to electronics store and get some of the rechargeable battery packs that will charge up cell phones and tablets that you plug into them. Get the biggest one you can get, because a full day of gaming, those tablets are going to run out, and you do not want to be losing access to your Hero Lab character right in the middle of a PFS session. And those things are cheap now, like $15 can get you some of them, $20 will get you a huge one, and you can just plug your tablet into those things.
And if you're a first-timer going to Gen Con to play PFS, do not assume that you will be able to find a power plug. Sagamore Ballroom is huge, and you may not be within 100 feet of a wall, not to mention a power outlet. So be independent, be prepared.
Right. And in general, don't try to plug up electronics into power plugs, period, because in these things, you've got a whole lot of people moving around that need to be moved around, and there's nothing, one of the few things I dislike more than trying to do the hopscotch dance around a bunch of stretched out power cords, hoping I don't destroy somebody's laptop in the middle of a room that's supposed to have 1,000 people walking through it.
Bard Wannabe does bring up, related to your point, Param, is that you do have to bring a paper copy of your character. Mike Brock has said so. You've got some flexibility. Usually you have to bring a physical copy or a PDF copy of any source book. There's a little bit more flexibility at cons, I believe, because they know that you've got to show up and navigate all just this humanity and gaming. But you still need, your character has to be there. You definitely have to have a physical copy of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What other tips would you give, Ryan?
Power is definitely one of them. And especially with people using cell phones for basically everything in their life. One thing, actually, I would suggest people bring a camera. So even if you do usually use your cell phone for pictures, you'll probably be using your cell phone for multiple things. And having a camera that's just a dedicated digital camera, something that we probably all have somewhere in a drawer of all obsolete technology, this is something that you can use purely to capture memories. It's something, it's going to have enough battery that you're not going to have to worry about taking up your phone's battery. It's going to have enough memory. It's going to be able to handle everything you need a camera to, because it's a camera. And it's good. We're in a world where we are not only, we like to document everything for ourselves, but we are kind of expected to document everything cool that we come across. And so if you want to have, your Gen Con folder after the fact on Facebook and be able to share your experience with your friends that couldn't make it, having a digital camera just in your pocket, always at the ready, I think that's a good idea.
And Owen, what are some of your best tips?
Don't book every single moment of your Gen Con. First of all, it takes time to get from one place to another, so if you've got a seminar that ends at 3 and a game that starts at 3, you're missing part of one or the other. If you're leaving the seminar early, there's a good chance you're disrupting other people. If you're late to the game, you're disrupting their game. Also, a lot of cool stuff happens at Gen Con that isn't scheduled. You can strike up a conversation with people you don't know. You can just wander by and look at the trucks. If you haven't done it before, it's worth visiting various rooms, because sometimes people have big sculptures or big posters. Or for a long time, I had a 3D beholder picture I took from the big model beholder that Wizards of the Coast brought, was my Facebook icon for a long time. That's just a cool thing to see, right? This is a live, up on a post, so effectively hovering beholder, and there's no telling where it'll be. It's worth wandering the parts of the con you don't normally hit. If you haven't seen Cardtropolis, some years they've got Battletech pods, some years they have rides on segways that you can rent. There's True Dungeon. Even just the games you don't play, right? Go to the card game area and see what's there. And if you happen to have a big time gap, there is almost always a game library. Grab a friend, grab a stranger that you'd like to make a friend, go to the game library, check out a game. You can just, I think you leave an ID, grab a table and play something you never played before and see if you enjoy it.
Yeah, I have a great example of that. One time, one of your earlier points, one time, I believe, Param, you were there with me. I was just going from point A to point B at the con, and there was just this group that had amassed, and someone came up to me and said, like, hey, we're playing a party game. It takes 20 minutes. It's called Two Rooms and a Boom. Do you have 20 minutes? And we are like, yeah, all right. And so we just joined in this game, and it was this 30-person game eventually where we were trying to get our assassin with a bomb strapped to him in the same group as the president and figure out who the president was. So you never know what you're just going to stumble across. And if you're like, oh, I don't have time for this, but maybe I'll find you in the exhibit hall or whatever, like you'll never remember all of the details of this game that you maybe would have played. So like having a little bit of freedom to be able to just jump in on a game because you stumbled across it, that's really important.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, you can do the same thing in the dealer's room, right? There are frequently demos there. If you've got free time, don't be afraid that your time must be booked in advance or you'll have nothing to do. Go to the dealer's room, walk 200 feet, and someone will ask you if you want to demo a game. Try something new. It can be an awesome.
I always make sure to demo a ton of games every time I go, and it usually works out best for the dealer's hall because I buy more games than I expected to.
Right.
A quick tip following up on Ryan's. For those of you flying into the United States, remember that our material might not be understood by border security. So on the airplane or in the hotel is not the time to start recounting with your geek friends how awesome Two Rooms and a Boom is and the exact strategy to get to the president. And there's actually a rather fun article, I don't know the source, out there on why Steve Jackson Games got raided by the FBI one year because of Cyberpunk, the role-playing game they were putting out. So understand that not everyone's a gamer, but once you get into Gen Con, this is all cool and no one's going to be throwing. But for those of you traveling from abroad and trying to cross our borders, you don't miss a Gen Con because you're having to be in a cold room while waiting on some NSA agents.
Yeah, I once, when I was traveling to Gen Con by plane, was talking to some friends of mine and mentioning that I was working on a set of droids for a Star Wars product, and we had an assassin droid, but I thought we'd picked the wrong one. And I realized I'm wandering through an airport talking at length about how I think we need to change assassins. I don't think the assassin we've got is a good bang for the buck. I think we'll get a better kill ratio, etc. And I thought, an airport is maybe not the place for this conversation, right? So we'll switch. We'll talk about something else. Now, as it happens, geekery is a lot more accepted than it used to be. I mean, things like Game of Thrones and the wave of Marvel movies and such have changed what can be considered mainstream. But Param's right. Think about what you're saying and where you're saying it, because it doesn't matter if you have the right to say it or whether or not it's likely you get nailed. If you're delayed, regardless of how things work out. And once you get to Indy, there will be lots of opportunities to talk about whether or not Superman can beat up Mighty Mouse.
Along the same lines, be conscious of what you're packing. I have had, actually the first time I went to PaizoCon, I checked a bag, and when I got there I got the little notice that they had to search my bag, and what they failed to do was put my $100 of dice back in my luggage. And so I lost my dice collection, which I cared very much about. I had no dice at gaming, and I'm sure it's just because when they went through the scanner, they just did not know what they were looking at. And likewise, when we were coming back from Emerald City Comic Con, my friend Will had Convert in his bag, and Convert is a game I plugged a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, where you were just kind of trying to make a box out of geometric shapes, and I'm sure to an X-ray, this is a super suspicious looking little game. So if you carry it, if you put it in your carry-on, you can explain everything in your carry-on. You can go into details, as much details as you need. But once it's something you check or something that's out of your league that you no longer have access to, then it's up to a security guard who looks at it to figure out what it is and whether this is something that you should have on a plane.
And if it's something you buy at the con, there are frequently shipping stations where you can ship stuff home surprisingly cheaply. Especially if you were already sort of packed up on carry-ons and check bags, it may be worth it to spend the extra money to not have to carry this thing. You can insure it, you can make sure it's properly packed, it's not going to be sat on by some guy headed to Hoboken. You can get it home safely without any concerns.
And then
especially if you, buy a sword.
Yeah. Another thing to pack in your bags is an empty bag, so that you have something to put your stuff into while you're walking the dealer's hall, and you don't have to pay the $40 for the Gen Con bags or the special bags they sell at the con.
And actually, I'm going to give the opposite advice for packing that we gave for your schedule. Only pack what you know you're going to need. Don't pack a couple of books because you might finish one or get bored with it and want the next one. Going down, yes, you want something to read, but on your way back, you're going to have plenty of new things to pick up. Same thing, if you know you're the kind of person that buys at least one t-shirt at a con, then make sure that you're leaving enough room in your bag that you're going to have room for your t-shirt. You're going to have room for the things that you're picking up. And if you are that confident, you can maybe even pack one less t-shirt than you would need to get through the weekend because you're going to pick something up. Or if you're a Paizo volunteer, you might be getting a whole bunch of volunteer t-shirts from Pathfinder Society. And this stuff takes up space, and do not pack perfectly. Do not Tetris your luggage going down, because then you'll have no room to bring stuff back. And there will be stuff to bring back.
A bit of a solemn tip that I don't like having to say is because I think most geeks are awesome, but this is a huge event with a lot of people you don't know. So be mindful of what you're carrying and be mindful of where it is. Too many gamers have all their collections, their giant stack of Magic cards and tournament decks, their D&D books, their awesome set of gold meteor dice stolen at these events every year. You see posts about it on Facebook all the time. So be mindful of what you have and don't trust that it's going to be left behind, because we're talking 50,000 people in a very tight space. No one's going to see and no one's going to know where it went.
Got a couple of comments from chat. Killrex says, wash your butt. Good advice.
In fact, let's do everyone a favor. Let's talk very, very briefly about gamer funk. Washing regularly is crucial, but it is not enough. You need deodorant. Even if you are normally one of those beautiful people who glisten and it's not an issue and you are not a threat to anyone's olfactory senses, in this case, deodorize. On the same token, don't heavily perfume or cologne, even if you're looking for Mr. or Mrs. Gaming Right. When we get a bunch of people crammed together, especially if there's a line, especially if it's hot, especially if people are running around, it just gets nasty. And it'll be a better experience for everyone if you have minimized all of your scent options.
Yeah, Rich Flynn just brought up the 3-2-1 rule of 3 hours of sleep, 2 square meals, or like a sit-down meal, and 1 shower a day. And if I'm being honest, as catchy as 3-2-1 is, it's really more of a 6-2-1 for me. I don't think I can function on 3 hours of sleep more than one night in a row.
And that depends a lot on who you are and what you're doing. When I was in my late 20s, 3-2-1 was fine. Sometimes I suffer insomnia and I end up with 0-2-1 no matter where I am and what I'm doing. That happens and I know how to cope with it. But don't replace sleep with caffeine. Caffeine will keep you awake. It won't keep you making smart decisions.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely had the chained Red Bulls where one Red Bull gets me through the day, keeps me up that night, and I need another Red Bull the next day, and that's just... then I'm just cranky.
While we're talking about drinking, some of you are going to drink because it's Gen Con. That's fine. Drink responsibly. It's especially if you're a freelancer and you want to make a first impression, don't make your first impression swinging around a light pole trying to decide whether or not you can leap off a fence onto moving traffic and survive.
You can do that.
That's not... Yes. And definitely don't try it, right? There are levels of bad idea. Sure, occasionally people get extra happy and extra tipsy, but there's nothing wrong with enjoying a drink. There's nothing wrong with enjoying being out drinking with friends. It's a long Gen Con tradition. But know what your limit is and try and stay safely on one side of it.
Yeah. Also, the one shower of the 3-2-1 is the minimum. Most of us do a 9-to-5 life. A lot of geeks, I imagine, do have 9-to-5 office lives and may not be used to a whole 18 hours of walking, hot, sweaty, intense situations, and not just so that you smell better, but you will feel better after having all that gunk off of you, and you might have some more energy to go back out and do more stuff if you're fresh.
For that matter, if you've got friends, and I'm talking about actual good friends that you know and trust, you know are going to Gen Con, find out where they are staying. Because more than once, I have either had a friend turn an ankle, and it turned out I was the person with the closest hotel room, so they could sit on it and put ice on it, or I ended up having a 6-hour day turn into a 16-hour day, and I needed a nap, and I had a friend who had a nearby room or something that was on the tram route or whatever. It's worth knowing where the people you know, love, and trust have their temporary bases of operation, and letting them know where yours are so that you can handle things that are the unexpected.
Now, I don't know if this is something you guys experience, but I often lose track of what day it is around Friday. And so there's a lot of apps that you can use, a lot of good calendar apps and alarm apps, just to remind you of what day it is, when you've got your scheduled events, how to get there. Like, don't just know where you're supposed to be, but actually have your plan of action and have something to remind you of when these events are coming up, because you don't want to miss anything important. And the people that are expecting you there want you to be there. So just it's one of those know yourself things. If you are the kind of person that can easily get bogged down with details or get distracted with all the shiny lights, and there are a lot of shiny lights, then do everything you can to stay on schedules, keep track of where you're supposed to be.
And also on the Gen Con website, you can download maps of the convention and the neighboring hotels where a lot of the events happen. They don't all happen in the convention center. And as awesome as it is to have the story of the time me and Eric Mona got lost in Central Station looking for the announcement seminar, I would really have loved to say this is when we got to successfully record the announcement seminar.
I thought it was James Jacobs.
Was it James Jacobs?
I don't know. You were there.
I thought it was Eric Mona. Never mind.
I trust you. You're the one it happened to. For some reason, I thought it was James.
We can go back to the tapes, but not now. All right, guys.
Param, I think this is a good time to shout out to people that we might need for the KD Con team.
We totally do need volunteers for the No Direction Convention team for Gen Con. Basically, we need people that are willing to sit through seminars that hopefully they would have sat through anyway and can be responsible for a recorder. Specifically, we need somebody that can attend the seminars that I personally can't attend, so that they can record the seminars and we can give them to the audience. We also have need of one person who is comfortable working a video camera for a special event thingy that will be happening at Gen Con at Friday at 3 o'clock.
And let me interject here that in case you haven't noticed how many Paizo people show up on No Direction, or you haven't noticed that No Direction people got awards at PaizoCon, we're aware of No Direction at Paizo. And remember earlier when I said put your name in front of the people you want to work for in a good light as often as possible? Volunteering is a great way to do that, be that for a Pathfinder Society or for some HQ, or even a podcast that seems to be beloved of the company you want to work for. These are good ways to get in, get your foot in, get noticed, get your face recognized. Advancing any kind of presence in the industry takes some work, and volunteering is a great way to start that work and make connections. And you never know if those are going to can come in and be handy. So if you were sitting there thinking, yeah, I could volunteer, but I don't wanna, you wanna. You really do. You may even have more fun than you know.
We'll even
No.
give you a little
Go ahead,
badge that says No Direction Volunteer, and it'll be awesome.
Which we've got to make, Param.
I will.
Okay, cool. Bard Wannabe wants to know if I'm going to be running demos, and I think we can broaden this up by just where people can find us when we're at the con. So my schedule's a little bit different this year. I am going to be going with Blind Ferret, so I'm going to be working the whole time. And unlike last year when I thought I would be getting most of Gen Con off, but working at the booth when they needed me, and then ended up just working the booth the whole time. This year I know I'll be working the whole time, but I won't necessarily be at the booth. I'll be doing one of two things. I'll either be demoing, and the game I am demoing is still up in the air because it may not arrive at Gen Con in time, and I'm a little freaked out by that, but I can't go into more details. But if the game that I'm supposed to be demoing isn't there, then there's another game I'll be demoing. I'll be demoing Looking for Group Adventures, which is our Pathfinder compatible box set. And the rest of the time I'll actually be meeting with a lot of people, so I won't strictly be at the booth. But the best place you're likely to find me is the Blind Ferret booth. It's booth 641, and if I'm not there when you get there, just ask any of the volunteers that are there, and I will have either coordinated with them when to expect me back, or I am a text away. Because I like meeting our listeners and having a bit of a chat, but then keep in mind, I will be working there, and so the chats will have to be fairly brief. We'll definitely say hello, we'll have a little bit of a chat, and if you get in on demo, then we can get a little bit more personal, we can have a little bit more chatting time. But I am there on Blind Ferret's dime, so I will do what I can to socialize without compromising my role there. Param, how can people find you at Gen Con?
Well, you'll mostly find me, okay, not mostly actually. A lot of the time you'll find me in the seminar room because I need to be there to get our recordings, and hopefully you guys can recognize the hat if nothing else. So that's a good way, but between seminars, guys. Don't want to interrupt any seminars that happened a little bit the last couple of years, and you know, I'm really cool to meet you guys, but I don't want to interrupt the seminars at all. So between seminars, I'm also going to be out and around the con you're going to see me hovering around the Paizo booth trying to get interviews, things like that. But what you can do is if you follow our No Direction Facebook account, I'm often posting what I'm doing live with pictures, so that, you know, to help, you know, boost the audience and boost the signal, and also to get views, because that's what a podcast lives off of. So that would be a good way to check out where I'm at or what I'm doing at any given time. And also, if you're at Gen Con, feel free to message me on Facebook. That's usually my go-to if you know of something going on. I can't say I'll do it, but if I'm free and there's time to hang out with listeners and it's something cool, you know, I'm always game.
And Owen, how can people find you at Gen Con?
I might be at the Paizo booth. I'm not assigned to do any working, but I happen to know a lot of people there, so there's a good chance I'll drop by. I may well actually spend some time at the gaming paper booth, which is Eric Bauer's booth, so there's a decent chance that you could find me there, and if not, you might be able to leave a note for me. I've got the one seminar on Thursday, and otherwise, like Param, Facebook is your best bet. I post to my Facebook fairly often. I don't, like a lot of game designers have two Facebooks, a private one for friends and then one that is their name, Game Designer. I don't do that, so it's just Owen Casey Stevens on Facebook. I accept friend requests from anyone who doesn't seem to be either a robot or a psycho killer. And I frequently post about where I am and what I'm doing. And as Ryan pointed out, the occasional psycho killer, right? If it's a psycho killer I actually hang out with occasionally, that's different.
Yay! All right, we are running really long in this episode, so Param, I'm going to move these two items to shout-outs.
That's one. I don't want to shout out that one, so let's just say it real quick.
Okay.
Because there's not really
we'll
much.
say them both then, really quick.
Because there's not much to say about the first one other than sadness. But it looks like the weekly web fiction for Paizo has come to an end. They've given lots of reasons. There are lots of good reasons. Mostly there's the new partnership with Tor. They don't need to use it as a recruitment anymore. And I will be honest that they're putting out a ton of written material, so much so that me and Ryan have a hard time keeping up with it. even without the web fiction. But at the same time, I have a lot of favorite stories and got to know a lot of characters the first times through the web fiction series, so I'm sad to see it go. But all things must change.
Being honest, I'm kind of shocked how long the web fiction has gone on. It's not something we get a lot of response to, and I'm sure the stories are high quality. I haven't read nearly as many of them as okay, you know what? I probably haven't read any in the last year, if I'm being honest. And I just every now and then I'll hear about one that I should be reading, but I'm always happy for free content, and I'm super impressed with the amount of Pathfinder Tales free content there is out there, and it's going to continue to be on the website. So when I finally have the free time, I will be able to go back and read up on all these characters and all these stories. So while conceptually I am sad to see it go, I have to be honest that it's not something that I've been taking full advantage of, and so it won't really affect how I'm interacting with Pathfinder as a brand, or with the web fiction, with the fiction line, Pathfinder Tales line. So I'm sorry for the authors. I know that this was a baby of James Sutter's for a long time, but I'm curious to see what this now opens up. What we'll see on the blog to replace it, or what we'll be seeing. No, you know what? Let's just stick to that. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble. I'm curious to see what we're going to see on the blog to replace it.
Right. I have theories. I'll talk about them next episode. And Owen can't talk about it, I'm sure.
And then the other thing that I want to do a quick shout out to is that Paizo is hiring. As we announced last episode, Mike Brock will be leaving the position of organized play coordinator, and so there is now a job opening, and this is probably the most community-oriented job there is at Paizo. So if you are just a people person, if you're someone who is passionate about Pathfinder and you've got the background to back it up, if you are someone that has actively worked with people and can prove that you are a very organized person, this is definitely a job that I recommend people check out. Mike has done an amazing job with it, and I think he's laid down a lot of groundwork, so it's probably going to be both a little bit easier to come into it than it was when Mike first started it, but also it's going to be a much larger pair of shoes to fill, because Mike Brock, he did a great job in this position, and I'm curious to see what the next person will bring to it.
Yep. I don't envy their first weeks, that's for sure, but get on there. It does have some rather steep requirements, including having been a Pathfinder Society venture officer of some sort, or 2 years experience with an organized play program.
There's a lot of venture officers out there at this point, and it just makes sense. It's completely tied into Pathfinder Society, and if you are committed enough that you think you could be the organized play coordinator, then you were probably committed enough that you were willing to volunteer. And like Owen said, volunteering is a great way to get your name out there and to get your face recognized.
Right. So we will be right back with the wrap-ups and shout-outs.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs.
Guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave you here.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shout-outs.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So there's a bed playing right now that we're talking over.
Sorry. Yeah, that's okay. It probably works best because it was the goblins anyway. But thank you so much for joining us, Owen. Again, anybody interested in Owen, check him out on Facebook. Check him out on Paizo's website. Check him out on Rogue Geniuses Games website.
And check out the hashtag Owen's Head.
Yes, definitely.
And contribute to it.
Yes!
Yeah.
It needs to live on.
Thanks, guys. All right, I'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you, Owen.
All
right, Parham. You got some... I've got a couple of shout-outs here.
Okay.
Actually, I've got a big stack of shout-outs. I'll start with... I referenced these both quickly, but one of them is The Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe, which is by Mark Belamo. And the other one is The Real American Hero, A Guide to Second-Generation O-Ring G.I. Joe action figures by James Kavanaugh. These are both wonderful, beautiful visual guides that, if you've got any kind of nostalgia for the G.I. Joe toy line, just flipping through these pages and seeing the toys laid out, mint condition with all of their accessories. He's got great pictures of all of the vehicles. all of the play sets. I believe he's got things like the pack-in figures, like the Sergeant Slaughter that I showed you. And yeah, so this one covers 1982 to 1994. So this is what's considered the real American Hero run, and it's the original run of G.I. Joe action figures. The second guide by James Cavanaugh is what he calls the second generation, and it is those collector's figures that they released in 1997, 1998, and then 2000 on for a couple of years. So these are mostly just repaints of familiar characters. So you might see there's a Serpentor with black armor. Cool slight variation on what we're familiar with. And then what's commonly called the New Sculpt era, even though there's been newer sculpts, but that's just what we call it. New Sculpt era is a different version of G.I. Joe. It's a softer plastic. The proportions tend to be a little bit more superheroic, but in a line that I largely don't care for and don't really collect, you will find some gems. So that Snake Eyes I showed earlier is actually my favorite Snake Eyes that was ever produced, and it is technically a New Sculpt figure. So those two books are both incredible guides for G.I. Joe. They are great resources if you're a collector, and they are great to flip through if you are just a fan.
Now,
have ever been a fan.
Do any of these books also, or is there any resource for, like there is for Transformers, where there are the illegal third world reproduction alternates of the characters?
That's where you want to go to yojo.com. And I don't believe that the foreign country stuff is in here, but the G.I. Joe stuff is not actually all illegal. They licensed out a lot of their molds. So a company like Fun School in India made some really wacky versions of the G.I. Joe characters. Like, most of Fun School stuff is just slightly lower quality versions of the characters in the colors you recognize, and everything looks perfectly normal. And then every now and then there's something weird. So Metalhead, actually this one was cool. Metalhead that came out in India had a plastic mold to make grenades and then some two-part epoxy.
Oh!
And this was never released in North America. But then there's Windmill, who was named Windmill because he was a helicopter pilot, but he was released on a card. So first of all, you've got the only single-carded version of Windmill. But second of all, they made this backpack for him that is just a fan. It looks like a carnival fan. It's a purple fan with a yellow spinner on top of it, and it is ridiculous. And don't think it's like a helicopter where it would be horizontal. This is a vertical fan, as though he's walking around just cooling everyone else down.
Well, I mean, they had Joes for everything else, so why not have someone that's just the portable air conditioner?
I guess. And then they also had Big Brawler, who the Big Brawler legend perpetuated because every couple of months to a year some new Big Brawler would come out, and the Indian Big Brawler came with a sword for no reason. So he was a sword brawler, and it was just like, so not only is he an amazing fighter that's going to beat you at everything, he's also going to out-sword Snake Eyes. He's going to cut you to pieces. Oh, Big Brawler.
One thing
another book type thing I want to shout out to, a couple of years ago Lucas gave me the Pathfinder journal at Gen Con, and I decided to dedicate this to actually my brawler character Datora. And so every adventure I write down the players I was with, their characters' names, who GM'd it, and then the clues that my character, or everything that my character, all his notes that the Pathfinder Society might like. And so this is a fun little document that I've kept track of all of his adventures in a way that the Chronicle sheets don't they don't sum up as well. He is making another 100 copies of a new journal for the Year of the Serpent, and it's, oh, you know what, Param, I should have sent you the image that he's shared on his Facebook page, but it is a really boss version of the Year of the Serpent logo with even more Cobra elements to it. Can I screen share, Param, or does it have to be you?
It has to be me.
All right, well,
it takes
then unfortunately you don't see it, but he's got the Pathfinders Explore, Report, Cooperate logo, similar to the one that we use in our advertising, the G.I. Joe Conversation, and then a really boss black and red version of the Aspis Consortium logo with a cool snake skin background. So if you can track him down at Gen Con, you may be one of the lucky 100 people that will be getting your copy of the Pathfinder Journal for this year. What else am I shouting out to, Param? Let's see. Oh, We Stand on Guard by Brian K. Vaughan and Steve Scorsese. So I don't know. I enjoyed this quite a bit, and I'm curious to see how non-Canadians will take it. But in the deep future, after the White House has been blown up, and for whatever reason the American government decided Canadians did this, and declared war on Canada. Here they are bombing Ottawa, our capital. We Stand on Guard is about the ragtag bunch of Canadian freedom fighters who are fighting for our freedom against Americans. It's shockingly Canadian. It's by Brian K. Vaughan, who writes Saga, and he's an amazing comic writer. He did Y the Last Man. He's not Canadian as far as I know, so he is just doing his research, I guess, and finding out just all the Canadian references that will make a Canadian giggle. They've got a French-Canadian character who is only speaking in French, and everyone else understands them. So I'm reading this. I know exactly what he's saying, but a lot of people will be reading it, and he's basically Chewbacca to them. The art is really nice. I am shouting out to this mostly because I want our American listeners to read it and tell me if they can enjoy it in some way that would probably be completely different from how I enjoy it.
I have a small little shout out, mainly because it ties into some previous conversation, in that they are going to make the dinosaurs.
Tell us about it.
Okay, so one of the upcoming pawn sets is going to be the Pathfinder Pawn Summon Monster Pawn Collection, which is basically a pawn for all the things that you can summon for Summon Monster, especially the ones that don't appear in bestiary entries, because that's how the supplemental sets work. And I specifically threw up there, well, actually this one's $25, so it's a bit bigger than normal. For a supplemental, for the supplemental ones, they were.
Oh, but it's not in a box. It doesn't have the.
So this is a weird one, weird pawn set, or
it might be the new prices. They did.
Oh yeah, they did do that.
Prices.
Yeah. So okay, so not sure.
They increased the prices.
Not sure, but either way, one of the first questions I threw up in there is, does this mean we get the dinosaurs? And they were like, yes. So finally, I can get my Celestial Ankylosauruses out there.
I'm happy you're happy, Param. I am amazed that with James Jacobs being the big dinosaur fan that he is, that we haven't had dinosaurs in any context until now. In any pawn context, I should say.
Well,
oh, hey, Lucas has included a link to the cover in chat, Param, if you want to quickly screen share that.
Okay.
And I'm just reading over some of the last comments. Best Steel says he had the 12-inch fuzzy G.I. Joe head. When he was a kid, his dad got him an accessory set that had all sorts of cool weapons and equipment. Memories. I have a weird relationship with the 12-inch Joes in that I respect their place in history, both in the G.I. Joe line and in toys in general. It was the first action figure. And yet I own no 12-inch G.I. Joes and actually have no interest in owning them. It's just not how I played with G.I. Joe. So, John, I'm glad you have fond memories of it. And I'm glad that we can have fond memories of G.I. Joe that are completely different, and we can sit down and just chat about what G.I. Joe means to each of us at some point. And actually, guys, I guess I want to give an extra shout-out, because we had a really interactive chat today, and most of the G.I. Joe chat was completely dictated by what you wanted to hear. And if at any point you said, as I've often heard on the podcast, you're talking too much about G.I. Joe, I would have ended the conversation there. But you guys seem to be as into it as I was. And you are looking on your screen right now. That is Lucas's Pathfinder Year of the Serpent character dossier, which is just beautiful, and I hope I can grab one at Gen Con this year. So for anyone that is going to Gen Con, we will see you in 6 days in Indianapolis.
6 days!
If you are not going to Gen Con, we hope to have our Gen Con coverage up within a week of Gen Con ending. So the first week of August, give us time to, recover. And by the second week of August, we should have at least a schedule up and our first couple of things.
Yep.
Until next time, I am Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.